Hello YouTube, Infinite Magicraid community, Gandalf here to bring you an ultimate defense compendium of the compositions that are most effective on arena defense. And as many will put it, a strong defense is a good offense, which is absolutely true because some of these best defensive teams are very strong offense as well, and because they're so well balanced to handle every situations, strong players, end game players tend to auto their battles in arena, and they will be using one of these teams to just clear through 10 and 20 wins in a row and finish their dailies that way. So if you're ever, aiming to have that goal eventually, just like how you auto PvE content and auto PvP content, building a strong, defensive focused team is a must. So if you haven't checked out my last compendium on offensive teams, check it out in the links description below. I believe will help you build very cheap budget teams that will help you push much higher than you will normally expect in your arena rankings. But at the end of the day, if you want to, push for those top 50, top 20, getting high in the diamond tiers, you definitely would need to have a solid defense so, people are not just feeding off you for free points. I know some of you are really busy, so we're going to dive right into it. I'll zoom in, allow you to take some screenshots, and then we'll go into the details. So, and for those of you who have not, seen the notations before, the ones and zeros at the bottom, they indicate the recommended exclusive to start at. When you see a +1, it means these are all the ones on the right as possible options. Here, for example, are swaps where you can potentially interchange some of these heroes for what's available in here. Let's get right into it. I'll zoom in so it's easier for you to see on your phone if you happen to be using a phone to watch. So from the top, you have a very um, early mid-game build where you kind of focus on Bryn Hill and Nordak as your key heroes. Usually Bryn Hill plus Nita could be very viable on defense, making it difficult to break through both of them. Then as a mid-game player, and a lot of you might have picked up Santa and Pandas, you could be aiming for the Bryn Hill variation of the defense. And if you got a Donald, Donald is great as additional add to the team to stop the opponent's offense by locking down the enemy's highest attacking hero. Then we got Lydia variations where Lydia is, does not synergize with Brynhild at all. So Lydia compositions, especially at exclusive 3, they become very strong. But Lydia is totally viable for mid-game players even at exclusive 1 or 2. Then finally we got the latest introduction to the game, Hen-E. Hen-E is a very allows your team to be very tanky. It counters the onslaught of Ben Austin, which is seen in many teams, and it rounds out your defensive prowess, but usually you do want other tanky heroes like the rest to round out your team. So this is your defensive compendium. So let's go right into the detail for those of you who are willing to stick around. From the top, as an early mid-game player, what you really want is to invest in some solid mythic at the beginning. So picking Nordak and Nita is a common choice. So at this point, you're onto your probably your third mythic, and this is when you can start thinking of either getting a Ben Austin, Bryn Hill, and start focusing on PvP. Ben is also great in boss, so he's also a really good pick. So maybe Bryn Hill could be like your fourth pick or something in the game. And here we see that you can have the defense against all of the dot damage, and you have the defense against the common cleaves coming in from Margarita. Um, so this will just the two of them will help a lot. From a survivability standpoint, you definitely need the Vampirism aura. Either take the legendary one or take the blue one. Even the blue one is really good on Brynhild to make it work. Rest of the team, Nordak is really just buffing everybody's HP. Um, Here you have, with a core team, Catherine's really there for the cleanse. If you have a Panda, Panda technically works better than Catherine. Or if you don't have a Brynhild but you got a Henna, getting a Henna and even just an access E0, E1 is more ideal because of the innate immunity. But if you happen to have a setup of Henna strip into Agatha paired with the HP buffs from Panda and Nordak, this is really strong to survive, and also the nuke back with a heavy AoE after stripping with him up. So these are kind of the core options of your team. Then let's talk about, the different tech options and what they bring to the table. Whim, in a way, is kind of like a budget, a very budget with being able to protect the ally that drops health. Similar with Cthulhu, being able to put that immunity on your ally that got knocked a little bit low. If the enemy has freeze and you want to secure that first turn, Snow, if it's possible, a okay option on defense. Having the slowdown a little bit. If you see a lot of freeze teams, Nizels, people attacking with Nizels in your arena bracket, Fagin is a wonderful pairing with Bryn Hill. Here you can see on the right, I recommended using the Divine Shield um, Echo on one of the team members so that she can start with 20% extra defense. Now Fagin gives another 60%. So it's not unlikely with a setup with Fagin. You can see a Bryn Hill starting with anywhere between 80 to 100k defense, which means one counter attack can probably wipe out the enemy's team, which is huge, especially at the mid game play where um, it's just like you're gonna have to hit Bryn Hills at some point, even if you manage to kill the rest of the team. So one counter attack at exclusive one is gonna hurt a lot. Anton's another great setup, being able to stun any hero that managed to hit him more than 25% of his HP in one stage of attack. So something like a Gilliman or Belton, where they don't manage to finish nuking you in one hit, that direct damage there will stun the enemy and they can't cleanse out of that. So it really interrupts their attack. Rumble and Popper have an interesting mechanic on death. So you could build them with really low budget. Just get some effective hit on them. You can leave them at level one with no good gear on. So it's just like all level one. You can just do all like accuracy set or effective hit set on them with and what you're hoping is the enemy kill them first, and then they trigger AoE control on the enemy, allowing you to secure um, that first turn, or to secure the counteroffensive, right? Um, you could also take the control mechanic um, as part of the tech option. So putting in Nizel forces them to put in, a Panda or a Catherine trying to take down this team, which means they have less power to hit you through on one hit. Ascendo is another great option if you happen to have the speed for it. Um, Gerda is another great option because Gerda blocks debuffs for your entire team. So you can't be hit by, poison dots. You can't be hit by. There's a high chance. There's a high chance you can, be blocking a lot of control effects. Gerda is someone that a lot of people sleep on, but Gerda is actually pretty solid for a defensive team, and it makes people don't want to, try on RNG in attacking your team. It kind of scares people away a little bit. Marvel is another great option. If you can get her fast enough to put on some sort of strip block and go with a fast Nordak or a Panda, um, then if you happen to have higher exclusive, Quinlan at exclusive 2 allows you to have that freeze control and dots, similar concept as the other two. Esther is another great introduction to the team where if Esther starts with the team with a 50% damage reduction, protect ally on the rest of your team, drastically increasing your survivability. Furthermore, she's probably not going to get killed in one hit, and the moment you kill first half of her life, she's going to stun whoever did that damage to her. So really, preventing you from a lot of the focus combos out there. So a great hero if you happen to have her. Clearly, you can see I unfortunately don't have her. And if you happen to roll a lot of Seth and Elzar's early, these two heroes also provide a lot of defensive option for you. If you hit Seth, first of all, you're going to be inflicted by cold or wet, but also he starts your team with a 45% shield of his health up front. Elsa puts Consolidation 2 on your entire team at the beginning of the battle, as well as putting Immortality on your team as soon as one of your heroes died. So, and this happens there's basically no way of killing your team without like a second hit with a strip, so making the composition setup on your opponent side really difficult because they can only kill one of you here on the first turn. Going to the right, these are probably some of the echoes you might want to bring to your team. Divine Shield probably on one of your heroes. Have one of these resistance plus attack buffing ones is helpful early game too, because you're probably going to be taking more than 4 turns, and getting that additional nice attack up for your team is helpful. Nordak could actually benefit quite a bit from the basic attack up. So once he's at exclusive 1, every time he takes a turn, he can charge up and do a really big hit based on the number of shields on your team, the total like scale off the shield value of your entire team, and you're going to be putting a lot of shielders on this team, right? So I've got to mention, if you happen to have a Santa, he's also a really good option. I'm not sure why I didn't put Santa on the list, but we're assuming low exclusives here, and Santa really, his value comes in on a PvP standpoint once he gets the apple. So until you have exclusive 3 Santa, I would suggest, some of the other options. Of course, if you have high HP, you can have this counter attack buff really good on Catherine. Every time when Catherine takes turn, you're doing a little bit of AoE damage to the enemy, scaling off your HP. Your Sendo should have this Echo if you have it. Mamook, this one. This is really good on Auth Ether as well. So that's kind of our base setup. Let's move into our Bryn Hill variations. So Bryn Hill is probably something where a mid-game player can really aim for. I think they brought back Santa and Panda very frequently now, so you can probably aim to have a couple copy of these. Um, Bryn Hill compositions really is supported by solid supports around her. Early game, you can really be thinking about, you could have the space Ben Austin for that fast, quick poke. You can put, exclusive 2 Panda. 3 is ideal, but a really slow one, so that if you're hit by control, Panda still is faster than space and clear your whole team. And what you're hoping for is a joint attack from Ben Austin that will just, snipe one of the opponent. Here we can consider using Elena. And Elena here provides a AoE strip, so if you can time it to have the strip right before the Santa, you can strip right into a freeze, um, allowing for a very nice setup. And Bryn Hill, you really need exclusive 3 to start being able to switch to the offensive mode and do a lot of damage on the jumping chops. So we call it the Bryn Hill bunny hops, and she goes around chopping down the entire enemy team, which is quite the sight to see. Here you can go for, if you happen to have, Nita or Donald, these are also great options to put them right behind your Bryn Hill, so Bryn Hill can strip into a Nita AoE, a very deadly combo there, similar Bryn Hill after going into a Donald snipe. So that's a really good setup as well. Nordak brings additional survivability to this team, so if you're trying for a Bryn Hill kill with a secondary DPS, I would suggest taking out Ben Austin for Nordak. Uh, or you can just put in Nordak to bring additional survivability to team and still have the main damage come in from your Ben Austin and your Brynhild. Um, you could also have some control variations as well. You could bring in the Nizil Santa Perma Freeze, pair it up with a Popper. So if you push the enemy turn meter back, you're very likely to get a freeze in, and then the Santa Deep Freeze. Now, even if the enemy has a Panda, it is likely that because you're running a very slow Nizil and a very slow Panda, you could turn meter reduce their Panda to a point where you could be freezing the rest of their team, putting a deep freeze on them, and their Panda is not going to save them at all from this type of perma-freeze defense. The second setup here is just, stopping the speed cleaves where you're, putting the Nizil there to mess up their turn order. As well as finally you got, Esther. Esther is my favorite one out of these because Esther at exclusive 3 is going to increase your Brain Health damage by 80% and also give your Brain Health additional turn meter, reduce and give her immunity or give her additional piercing depending on which buff she's giving her. Adding a revive to the whole team as well when she's using the yellow buff. So having a really fast Esther make this a wonderful defense because enemy likes to potentially strip away your buffs at this point, especially if you try something like, a Nordak in this team setup as well. So um, you, this could very much be a very viable option as well because if you accidentally strip off of the blue buff, they're taking a 40% turn meter, allowing you to really combo early there. So this is kind of your Bryn Hill variation. Here we can start introducing some additional stamps here. Um, you want to have high effective res on a lot of your team members. So, Santa normally comes with high effective hit, so this particular echo will be really helpful. If you happen to be running Nita, you definitely want someone on the team with the poison damage buff. And if you're running Agatha, you definitely want uh, this particular echo, which boosts the piercing of her attacks. Nordak actually could potentially be using this as well, since he gives himself quite a bit of a big shield as another option as well. Here, Bryn Hill probably benefits from this echo the most because it boosts up the crit and crit damage for the rest of the battle. But this new one that was introduced a few weeks ago could also be helpful on Bryn Hill because you could be building a Bryn Hill with high effective res as well. A high effective res with high defense and crit rate damage makes a Bryn Hill much more difficult to deal with. And if you happen to have the tough sets or the slay sets with a lot of effective res to make it work, she starts with 40% additional effective res as well. And Santa's going to give another 28 or is it 32? I can't remember. So it's very easy to get a Brynhild into the high effective res, plus another 50 from Panda. Um, Getting your Brynhild to a point where even if the rest of your team dies, but she can't be CC'd, that is terrifying to deal with. Because usually when you try to deal with a Brynhild, you're hoping to either control it, freeze it, stun it somehow, or you're trying to defense break it. So if she has high effective res, and if you can spare those substats to her, it will make her very painful to deal with uh, when you're trying to break down Brynhild on defense. So finally, we got the most broken two heroes that were kind of introduced to the game lately for very strong arena defenses. The Lydia variation and the Henna variation, you will see a lot of similarity between these two setups. Really, your core is again your Santa Panda um, with Lydia or Santa Panda plus Henna for the setups. And what you've noticed is the common theme is these two heroes, even though they were introduced almost a year ago, they're absolutely key to having really strong defensive capabilities. The cleanse is absolutely, a necessity, and the Santa's Apple prevent you from getting, one shot by a really single hard hit. So that's why, we don't see Lucifers anymore, right? Or even Belton. You do really need to get Belton's second hit in there. Otherwise, heroes that don't have a lot of multi-hit capabilities can't go through that apple. Um, so first let's talk about Lydia variations. Lydia paired with Donald is a very common setup, or Lydia paired with Nita. Um, and on the other side, if you happen to be using Donald, the recommendation is to use Ben Austin, and if you happen to use Nita, Nordak is probably the better choice because the auto attacks from Donald are still hit quite a bit, and there's quite a bit of stun effect there. So that joint attack is better when you're using Donald here. Um, you could even, consider using Allcaster on here to get a little bit more of a perma-freeze kind of setup with control. And if your Allcaster happens to die, it will most likely, pass it to Lydia, allowing your Lydia to do even more damage. I have seen bunny setups as well to jump on to Lydia to protect her and run as a possible single DPS setup in this situation. Popper is another annoying one. Popper on death, is the AOE, but the turn meter and the stripping coming through through Popper is also annoyance to deal with. But the most common ones I see is the Nordak variation or the Beno variation uh, uh, with uh, with Nita as probably still pretty common, but not as common as the Donald setup. Then moving on to the Henna variation. Oh, sorry, and here you do want to make sure your Lydia do have this echo. It's probably the besting slot for her since she's the key hero that we focus on in this variation. Your Lydia really has to be really well built, high crit attack to be doing a lot of damage uh, in this team composition. Then you got the Henna variation, and here you're combining um, Henna with Lydia together. The weakness to Lydia compositions alone is that they're kind of weak to Ben Austin attacks where, Ben Austin will be able to allowing you to focus on one hero at a time, not allowing you to, steal any of the buffs and shields from the enemy team. Um, having now Hen to protect your weakest hero 100% of the time just makes it even more deadly. So the most common teams we see right now is perhaps the Hen Lydia plus Nordak, or sometimes you have this team set up with a Donald mixed in there as well. People have shared with me a team like this can win, you know, 20 auto attacks in a row in Classic Arena, even in the latest event, up into the King tier. So you're in the like the top 20 to 50 player range, and this is a menace to deal with when you see a team like this. So there you have it, the ultimate compendium on defensive team, and hopefully this video was really helpful for you for building out a solid team in your arena. And good luck going after those placements, and I'll catch you in my next video. Take care wherever you're at. And if you got it to this far and you really enjoy the content I make, please like, subscribe. Um, and I will be rolling out a lot of content when it comes to the fair arena that's coming around, and I will also be probably releasing some tier lists around that. So looking forward to catch you in my next video. Take care.